Noor was an ugly, down bad, worthless little peasant born into a poor family with no bright future. He always wanted to be an adventurer but could only pick up one basic skill: parrying. In the middle of nowhere, he freelances his way to survive as he cleans up piles of crap off the street, helps townsfolk with random errands, and lends a hand doing manual labor like a brokey at a construction zone nearby. In return, Noor earns some bread so he can live day to day. After completing his work at the construction site one afternoon, Noor heard the voice of a girl screaming for help from a dungeon in the distance. Without any hesitation, Simp Lord Noor instantly springs into action and reaches the dungeon as fast as he can so he can bag the baddie for himself. However, upon reaching the dungeon, Noor immediately regrets his decision as he stands before a giant minotaur. As Noor pisses his pants, he briefly enters a flashback about the time when he was around 11 years old. Young Noor used to live with his mom in a small cottage, located at the northwest part of the Clay's kingdom. He worked tirelessly in order to support his mother, who sews and looks like she does fentanyl. Furthermore, his father mysteriously died when he was still an infant, so Noor was forced to do child labor in order to withstand the household expenses. One day after returning from his slave work, Noor made his mother herbal tea to help cure her sickness. Proud of her son's grind, his mother cleaned up his face and apologized for being such a burden on him, asking Noor to not push himself too much and enjoy life more. Later that night, after Noor prepped some disgusting soup, he carried the bowl to his mother only to find out that she'd lost her battle with Corona. The next day, Noor buried his mother and decided to use the pain of losing her to go all out on his grind, taking on the Sigma mindset. He starts to manage the entire farm by himself, studying and making himself stronger in his free time. He even became a master of hand fishing, but as he had no family or friends to share the dinner table with, he would eat all alone. One night, Noor stumbled across a book which his father had once read to him about the legend of some adventurers who had slayed a gigantic dragon and lifted the forest's curse after learning magic from an old sorcerer in the past. After farming some nostalgia, Noor remembers his mother's words to pursue his own dreams, and so he decided he would head to the town to become an adventurer. The next day, Noor leaves his livestock with plenty of food and says goodbye to his parents' graves before heading out. After a while of walking towards the town, Noor sets foot out of the barrier for the first time in his life and marches off into the dense forest. As night arrives, Noor finds a place to light a fire and rest, flinching at the slightest sound of bushes rattling nearby. After clearing the night without wetting himself, Noor continues his journey and eventually reaches a cliff where he's able to see the entire kingdom for the first time. Upon reaching the gates, he asks the two guards for directions to the guild master and enters the kingdom. Having been alienated from the richness and liveliness of a city, he was taken aback as it was his first time seeing so many people gathered in one place. Noor makes his way to the guild master, looking at all the shops and vendors. Upon entering, he finds a bunch of adventurers along with the guild master, but the guy immediately tells Noor to leave and return to his parents because this isn't a place for kids. Noor explains that both of his parents are dead, guilting the guild master into accepting the poor orphan. He's never seen a kid like Noor do this before and explains that those wanting to register with the Royal Capital's Adventurers Guild train at the Royal Training School. If he wants to become a Chat adventurer, he needs to acquire some skills first, like the art of the sword or magic. Excited, Noor wastes no time and attends the training school. All the other candidates are much older, but Noor is unfazed by the age gap and focuses on perfecting his swing. The guy next to Noor successfully discovers his elemental power, as have a few others, but Noor doesn't compare his progress and carries on focusing on himself. A few months later, Noor finds himself still exactly where he started. Disappointed, the sword master tells him to take his garbage ass and choose a different path, and that his talent may be found in another training school. With a heavy heart, Noor leaves extremely demotivated, but decides to try his luck becoming a warrior since it's close enough to being a swordsman. But after a few months, he's only able to achieve a slight improvement in his physical strength, therefore he's also expelled from being a warrior. He then enrolled into hunter training, but was scolded and kicked out because he totally lacked the sense to handle any sort of delicate weaponry. Not realizing that his only power was being an orphan and gaining sympathy, Noor tries being a thief, but couldn't dismantle a simple trap or sense anyone's presence, so becoming a spy became out of the question. Soon after, Noor joins magician training, and once again he gets rejected as he is only able to muster up a tiny flame. One after another, Noor gets rejected by every school, setting the world record for being the greatest failure that ever tried to become an adventurer. Noor eventually returns to the guild master, who can't believe he spent a full 3-month term at every training school and didn't gain one decent skill, so has no choice but to refuse his application to become an adventurer. Crushed inside, Noor returns back to live in his pathetic cottage. Upon reaching home, Noor stands beside his parents' grave, who had no significant achievements themselves, making them an entire family of losers. However, Noor decides to take matters into his own hands to become a godly adventurer, as he carves a sword out of a wooden plank and applies everything that he had learned into his training. He remembers his sword master telling him that if he practices one skill repeatedly, he may be able to master a new skill. Parrying was the only significant skill that Noor acquired at the swordsman class training, so he vows to train morning, noon, and night to master it. After 1 year of rigorous training, Noor increased his parry range to 10 swords in one breath. After 3 additional years, he was able to parry a staggering 100 swords in one breath. However, he still hasn't acquired any new skills, so he decides to make his training more and more intense. 10 years later, Noor's ability to parry is so strong that it sends ripples of wind throughout the whole forest and could parry 1,000 swords. And yet, he's still unable to achieve any new skills. It's now been 14 years since he left the capital, so Noor finally decides to give the Adventurers Guild one more try. As he walks back in, he's met with a young girl at the guild's front desk. Seeing Noor's listed abilities, the girl tells Noor that unfortunately, it's most likely he can't become an adventurer with his Ligma genes. However, just then the guild master walks in, only to find Noor all grown up. The two have a drink to catch up, and the guild master is impressed that he's kept up his solo training all these years, and seeing how desperate he is, the old man decides to cut the poor orphan a break. He explains to him the different ranks, S rank being the highest and E rank the lowest. To be recognized as an E rank, you're required to have more than one useful skill, making Noor lose hope since he only has one. However, the guild master reveals there's a rank that's basically unheard of, even lower than E rank, which is F rank. Noor doesn't care and jumps at the opportunity to become an official adventurer, although the guild master restricts him to local quests and complaints around the city only. After receiving his F rank adventurer license, Noor heads out feeling like a new man. He began helping the locals like a white knight, utilizing the minor skills he learned in training. His dream of becoming an adventurer and being of use to people had finally come true. Even at the construction zone, Noor was easily the strongest one there, the day of the events that occurred before the flashback when Noor heard a girl's scream coming from the dungeon. We see him dart over once again and is met by the giant minotaur inside. The adventurers who were trying to protect the girl instantly get yeeted to the nether realm by the minotaur right in front of Noor's eyes. After the competition for his waifu has been wiped out, Noor locks in and immediately grabs a fallen knight's sword, setting the attention of the minotaur towards himself using a rock. Upon distracting the powerful beast, Noor lures it away from the girl and begins parrying its flurry of attacks, waiting for a chance to counter. However, just then he remembers that he doesn't even have any attack skills to counter with. Quickly, his sword starts to crack from the minotaur's powerful attacks and returns its attention to the girl once again. Seeing that the minotaur was headed for the girl, Noor immediately dashes in using his feather step ability acquired from thief training all those years ago and brutally finishes the minotaur with one final parry. After rescuing the girl, more knights swiftly arrive as she actually turns out to be a princess. She asks for Noor's name and introduces herself as Lady Lindbergh, but the humble Giga Orphan says he's no one important and leaves before she can even thank him. After heading back into town, Noor realizes that he still has more training to do since the loose minotaur he just killed wasn't even a demon, and if he's to rise up the ranks fast, he needs to be able to defeat monsters like that with ease. Meanwhile, as Noor left, a search party arrives at the scene and collects the remains of the dead minotaur. On the other hand, Lady Lindbergh is immediately checked out by the royal guard named Ains, who makes sure she wasn't harmed in any way. Ains further shows her deepest regret for not accompanying her on this adventure. After a while, an irrelevant lord interrupts the two as everyone is returning back to the castle. After everyone settled back in the town, Lin's brother called Reen questions his sister and later begins conspiring about how the minotaur entered the city in the first place. Channeling his inner Sherlock Holmes, Reen is able to conclude that the minotaur was summoned by the kingdom of Doritas, as the ring left on scene had a very high purity according to Oaken the wizard. And since the gem used in the ring wasn't found in their town, Reen ultimately concludes the kingdom of Doritas guilty of summoning the beast. However, Reen still is confused about the mystery man who slayed the minotaur and saved his sister Lin. He's also in disbelief as in the report, Noor was able to lose the secret team who was tailing him. The next day, Noor heads back to the guild to collect his payments, overhears adventurers talking about the huge A-rank demon attack at the dungeon. Courtesy of his autistic tendencies, Noor gets confused and doesn't know anything about it, even though he was the one who slayed the demon. Moreover, Noor asks the guild master about the person who killed this powerful minotaur, to which the guild master revealed it was taken down by a mystery adventurer in one blow. The old man used to be an A-rank adventurer himself and even thinks he wouldn't have stood a chance in his prime. Noor is impressed by the sound of this mystery man not knowing it's actually him. After a while, Noor receives his pay for helping the townsfolk. The guildmaster asks Noor if he really wants to continue being a F ranker since he's restricted to crappy jobs, but Noor says he's completely fine with being the worst rank as long as it meant that he'll be considered as an adventurer. As Noor was about to be on his way, Lin appears demanding to meet her savior. Shocked seeing the princess in the guild, everyone including the guildmaster starts fangirling over the princess, whereas Noor, being a Giga Chad farmer, is cool as ever. Upon meeting with Noor, Lady Linnesberg reveals that she was able to track Noor down using her long-distance detection skill. Impressed, Noor asks if her occupation belongs to the thief-clad sword which Noor had lifted using only one arm. After a while, Noor does a 180 to return back to his home, and just then, he realizes that the sword had a perfect length and width to scrape out poop from the ditch job that he had recently done. As Noor was brainstorming godly ideas on how to utilize the berserk sword, Noor is interrupted by Inz, who deeply apologizes for her rude behavior in front of someone who had saved Lin's life. She also tells Noor that if he needed anything from her, he could ask. But before he could request for the Hawk Tua, Noor is once again interrupted as Gilbert shows up and challenges him to a practice match. After following Gilbert to the dueling arena, Gilbert asks Noor to choose any wooden weapon of his liking. Since Noor was only familiar with swords, Noor obviously selects a wooden sword, whereas Gilbert chooses a wooden staff for himself. After selecting their weapons, Gilbert initiates the practice duel by thrusting his spear at Noor first. Without any struggle, Noor is easily able to parry the barrage of spear thrusts from Gilbert, and after a while, Noor tells Gilbert to step up his game cause he was slow AF. Annoyed, Gilbert starts to move and swing his spear much faster, and he then goes in and starts mixing his attacks with feints. Unfazed, Noor once again tells Gilbert to speed his monkey spear game up, but he soon starts to speculate if Gilbert was even going all out. Enraged, Gilbert finally snaps and decides to use his killshot technique, Dragrave. To evade the attack, Noor immediately uses Feather Step and a physical enhancement buff skill to dodge the attack completely. Embarrassed, Gilbert falls to his knees as Noor stops the fight and accepts the loss. Misunderstanding Noor's action to take the L, Gilbert feels that Noor had selflessly decided to move out of the ring in order to protect Gilbert's own honor in front of his men. After a while, Gilbert starts to have a flashback, remembering his first fight and how he shot up the ranks, defeating the best of the best using his spear arts. Following his flashback, he remembers his coach's advice to him about not leaving the country, but refining oneself for war in their own country. However, back then, Gilbert was bored AF, so his coach had let him journey towards the main town. During his journey to Clay's, Gilbert had leisurely killed goblins and demons purely for the heck of it, while simultaneously getting paid big bucks for it. Upon joining the Clay's army, Gilbert was always able to defeat strong recruits, and he once again started to grow bored of fighting weak opponents on repeat. As his boredom started to reach its peak, Gilbert had a friendly chat with the Sword-class master in which he explained how he couldn't care less about the title of being the royalty's personal guard, and he was just hoping for a strong challenger. Reassuring Gilbert, the Sword-class master promised Gilbert that someone soon will come who will be strong enough to fulfill his cravings of battle. Back at defeating strong recruits, Gilbert was easily able to humble strong newcomers. That is until the CEO of parrying Noor arrived. Back at the present, Gilbert is too surprised to believe that he has finally got spitted on, and he humbly takes the L as Noor's wild card entry gets him excited for the future. Meanwhile, as Noor was returning back to the town, Noor's last two brain cells once again try to remember Gilbert's name as he was thankful for the fight, and he felt that if he hadn't used Feather Step, he would have surely died. The next day, Noor returns back to his daily routine as he is seen scooping up poop from the drains like a pro thanks to his berserk sword. Spectating Noor achieve the fastest world record of cleaning shit, the townsfolk started to request for Noor's help, and Noor started to gain a lot of new commissions due to his excellent work at cleaning the clogged ditch. Impressed with his sword, Noor starts to imagine the great things he could do with his sword, like using it as an oar or cleaning out ditches and baking food. After a while, Noor suddenly remembers that he was still a failure as he sits down and lights his tiny flame, the only proof of his miserable bloodline. After a while, Lin finds Noor sitting in the forest, and she requests Noor let her become his apprentice. However, believing that he was a noob at everything except parrying, Noor refuses Lin's request and starts to parry Lin's repeated apprenticeship requests like a pro. Thinking that Noor was only rejecting her cause she was weak, Lin starts to show off her magic skills, which leaves Noor's jaw dropped. Apparently, Lin chops a whole tree with her tiny mist blade, displays her prowess with her icy powers, and she finally flexes her strongest attack by displaying her flame-generating powers that she had learned from the Ucha clan. Seeing her powers, Noor realizes that Lin was mistaking him for being a strong dude, and he finally shows Lin his tiny flame in order to prove that he sucked in magic and in every other class there existed. However, once again, Lin misunderstands him as she remembers stories from her training school about the strongest talentless boy. Moreover, she remembers the time when Oaken showed her his tiny flame, which was a hair bigger than the other magician class students. According to her memory, she remembered her tiny flame being the size of a teardrop, and Oaken told her that the tiny flame's growth represented one's training and determination to become stronger. Back at the present, Lin is shocked to see Noor's tiny flame, which was about the size of a human head, and his tiny flame was 1,000 times bigger than the world's strongest magician, Oaken's tiny flame. Moreover, Lin finally admits that she cannot be Noor's apprentice since Noor was unparalleled in all adventurer class branches. Furthermore, she decided to follow Noor's footsteps as she now believed Noor to be the perfect sensei to follow so that she could become strong like him in order to be a powerful successor to the throne in the future. Later that night, Lin finds Noor's location once again and she starts to call him Sensei Noor, leaving Noor facepalming his head off. Since he had no way to refuse Lin from following her, he ultimately lets Lin become her apprentice at last. The next day, Reens is seen thinking about why his father just gave away the black blade to a complete stranger even after knowing how strong the sword's quality is. Initially, he believes that his father wanted to give away stuff to feel like he was Mr. Beast, and he had made a foolish decision whilst doing so. However, after a while he understands that his father is really bothered by the crippling state of peace, and he is probably counting on Noor to work as a wild trump card. Meanwhile, Lin and Noor fill themselves with kebabs and rice before going to the guild. Upon reaching the guild, Lin and Noor get commissioned for a goblin hunting job since Lin and Noor's cumulative party rank was C, Noor bumping up to C rank whereas Lin goes down from B to C rank. Excited, Noor realizes that one of his dreams is coming true, and he instantly leaves for their adventure before the guild master could even share the coordinates. Realizing that his silly ass was headed towards nowhere, the goofy Beka smirks and comes back to receive the coordinates. As a brief, both of them are instructed to bring back the goblin's right ear as proof of their kill. Afterwards, they both get checked at the gates and they leave to get on with their hunting adventure. As they walked into a very dense forest called the Forest of the Beasts, Noor noticed that the vibes of the forest were different from the forest in the south side. Noor then asks Lin about goblins and Lin starts to yap about their reproductive and aggressive tendencies, yada yada. She further reveals that even though adventurers kill goblins, it was necessary to spare some of the goblin population since they were the reason the forest's ecosystem thrived. Realizing that Lin was also more knowledgeable than his 5th grade self, Noor truly believes, even more so than before, that he isn't worthy of being a sensei, as throughout the heaven and earth, Noor alone was the honored Baka. After walking for a while, Lin finally starts to detect a goblin's presence nearby, and upon reaching the place, suddenly the goblin's presence miraculously vanishes. Believing that the goblin might have died or gotten killed somehow, they both move on, and after a while of looking around, they finally are able to spot the goblin. However, the goblin they were after had gotten split in half like Gojo, and upon a closer inspection, Lin is able to spot a sussy camo spell and she uses her uncover skill to dispel it. After using her uncover spell, Lin is able to uncover a giant goblin emperor with a gemstone on its forehead like the one on the Minotaur. Seeing a goblin for the very first time, Noor believes that the goblin emperor was just a regular goblin, unbeknownst to him that he was facing a level 1000 goblin mafia boss. Without any second to spare, the goblin immediately yanks 2 trees out, whereas Lin knew Tellus herself. Seeing the goblin's big makes Noor insecure, and hence he barges in without hesitation, motivating Lin to do the same. Moreover, Ling speculates that this goblin is an artificially powered goblin with human DNA infused in it. As the battle is initiated, Noor easily parries the trees yeeted by the goblin emperor, and Lin fires her wind cutter attack at the monster to damage it. After seeing the goblin emperor had regenerated within a matter of seconds, Lin realizes that the source of the goblin's energy was from the gemstone stuck on its forehead. After revealing this info to Noor, Noor tells Lin to use her wind cutter attack at him. Initially hesitant, Noor reassures Lin that he will not get hurt since he would be placing the black blade on his back to negate the damage. To initiate Noor's strat, Lin shoots her wind cutter at Noor, which sends Noor flying towards the goblin. Using his jump power, Noor is able to level himself with the gemstone, and he smashes his black blade to knock the gemstone out from his forehead. After clutching up for the team, Noor tells Lin to finish off the goblin, and she kills it using fire magic. Later, at the castle, Reins receives the enormous gemstone and he asks Lin about the goblin. In response, Lin confirms that the Emperor Goblin was several times larger than the Goblin King. To investigate more into this matter, Reins gets all the reports of unusual activity together to investigate, and he sends off his expert scouts to gather more info. Back at the guild, Lin and Noor realize that they forgot to bring back the right ear they had to bring as evidence, as they had burned the goblin to crisp, hence they got no pay. Next in line for the throne, Lord Rian pores over the latest spy reports with a troubled frown. Odd things are happening across the kingdom. Mysterious noises at night, vanishing pets, a missing grandfather, silent forests, and terrified farm animals. Rian is at a loss about what's happening to their land. Then, recalling a recent event involving his sister Lin in the Forest of Beasts, he realizes that unseen enemies might have sneaked into their territory. Acting swiftly, he orders his men to send out skilled guards capable of detecting hidden threats. He also calls for an urgent meeting with the 6 sovereigns. His aides hurry to carry out his commands, leaving Rian alone, frustrated with himself for not recognizing the signs of invasion sooner. His resentment toward the Magic Empire intensifies, puzzled over their intense desire for the Dungeon of the Lost and their willingness to destroy other nations for it. In the bustling city market, Lin is enjoying a meal with Noor, laughing off a recent mishap where they accidentally long. Noor looks around puzzled, not seeing any shield. Seeing his confusion, Inz decides to show him what she means. She extends her hand and with a flourish summons her divine shield, a shimmering barrier of light green energy. Noor, thoroughly impressed, starts poking at the energy shield while Inz explains that it can block most weapons and spells. Watching her, Noor remembers hearing that Inz is as formidable as Gilbert, who is rumored to have slain a dragon. If Gilbert can take down such a beast, Inz might be capable of the same. Noor thinks about how he struggled with just one goblin and realizes their strengths are in a completely different league. Noor praises Inz for her remarkable abilities, but his compliment brings back memories of her childhood. Inz grew up in an orphanage where she first discovered her unique power to summon energy into her hand. One day, a curious friend touched the energy and immediately screamed in pain as her finger started bleeding. The incident left Inz traumatized. Just a few hours later, the 6 sovereigns, a group of powerful leaders, summoned her to their office. The kind priest comforted her, assuring her that her friend had been healed, and asked Inz to demonstrate her power again. A mage present observed her ability and noted that it was an exceptionally rare gift. He explained that she could shake the energy into anything, a blade that could cut through any material or a shield that could block any attack. Her powers were so potent that they had the potential to topple nations. At that point, a mighty warrior, the holy knight Dandu, stepped forward. He promised to help her harness her abilities. Under Dandu's guidance, Inz learned to use her power defensively, becoming so skilled that she could even stop a falling rock all by herself. Although Inz then had total control over her powers, she still was worried about the possibility that she might accidentally hurt someone, so she began distancing herself from her friends and the people around her, and soon enough, she became a lone knight. Fast forward to when Inz met Noor at the castle. She first heard of his name when she was at the forest with her master and foster father, Dandu, in the process of subjugating a monster. In a moment of hesitation, Inz dropped her guard and almost got herself killed, but Dandu saved her life by intervening just in time. Dandu always had an odd habit of mentioning a mysterious name, Noor. During one intense moment when they learned that a large horde of monsters was approaching, Dandu remarked that having Noor with them would make things much easier. This left Inz confused. She had never heard of Noor before, and Dandu didn't bother explaining further, simply telling her to ignore his comment. Couldn't understand why her mentor longed for Noor's presence when he already had a gifted daughter like her. This sparked a sense of envy towards a man she had never met, who was now sitting right beside her. That's why Inz had been acting rudely towards Noor. Realizing that her behavior was unbecoming of a knight sworn to protect the House Clays, she checked herself. Deciding to set aside her petty jealousy, Inz refocused on her primary duty, which was to ensure Lady Lin's safety above all else. While Noor is lost in admiring the natural scenery from the carriage, he suddenly spots a peculiar trail cutting through the wheat fields in the distance. His expression shifts, catching Inz's attention. She asks him if something's wrong, prompting Noor to point out the unusual trail he's noticed. Lin, curious, peers out and notices an ominous aura hovering over the fields, draining life from the crops. She quickly instructs Inz to stop the carriage and steps out to confront the unseen threat. Using her uncover spell on the area, Lin reveals a massive winged toad monster, catching them off guard. Simultaneously, back in the royal capital, King Clay receives urgent news from Rian. The kingdom is under attack. Monsters are swarming in from every direction, and despite the valiant efforts of the royal forces, they are overwhelmed by the sheer number of invaders. Rian orders his subordinate to deploy the Swordsman Corps so that they can help evacuate the citizens. He also tells him to deploy the Shadow Company and the Hunter Corps so that they can help the knights eliminate the invaders. King Clay doesn't understand why the Duras Empire would go to such lengths just for the treasures of the Lost Dungeon. He asks Rian about the situation and learns that the 6 sovereigns are also helping the knights, but still, he doesn't think that would be enough. The scene transitions dramatically as we witness 3 goblin emperors wreaking havoc, trampling knights as if they were mere ants underfoot. Dan arrives on the scene, determined to bolster the beleaguered soldiers. He urgently commands them to defend the area with their lives. Meanwhile, we catch glimpses of the other members of the 6 sovereigns in action across different fronts. The swordsman, a formidable force, has single-handedly slain dozens of monsters in his jurisdiction. The archer leads the archery squad, directing volleys of arrows towards the enemy from a safe distance. The wizard employs his powerful magic to incinerate monsters, while the healer busily tends to the wounds of injured soldiers. In the shadows, the assassin strategically eliminates monsters unseen and lethal. Back with Noor, a young boy is revealed to be leading the toad monster. When Lin disrupts the monster's control with her uncover skill, the beast becomes erratic and turns on the boy. Noor, ever the empath, does not hesitate. He rushes in to shield the boy, parrying the monster's attacks, showcasing his profound commitment to protect the vulnerable, regardless of the danger to himself. While Noor battles for his life, Lin makes a startling discovery. The boy Noor is trying to protect is a demi-demon, capable of controlling the monster. Lin recalls what her brother Rien taught her, that nearly 2 centuries ago, demonkin nearly faced extinction due to their threats to humanity. Some survived, hiding away and biding their time for revenge. Lin concludes that this boy must have summoned the toad dragon as part of a plot against humans. Ains, observing the situation, disapproves of Noor's actions. She criticizes him for his lack of judgment, helping a demon and thus endangering themselves further. She is convinced that Noor won't last long against such a formidable enemy. Despite her doubts, Noor insists he's handling the situation well and begins to question why the toad appears weaker than expected. As the toad unleashes a magical attack, Noor doesn't attempt to dodge. Instead, he bravely parries the strike, positioning himself to shield the boy behind him, further demonstrating his unwavering commitment to protect others, regardless of the risk to his own life. Engaging the monster turns out to be a grave error as its attack releases toxins that poison Noor. The air becomes thick with poison, forcing him to surrender to the overwhelming fumes. Lin rushes forward to aid Noor, but Ains holds her back, prioritizing Lin's safety and leaving Noor to face his fate alone. Just then, a monster launches a similar attack on Ains and Lin. Ains swiftly raises her divine shield to block the poison, urging Lin to disregard Noor and focus on their own survival, arguing that Lin, as the princess, holds more importance. However, Noor, despite his weakened state, refuses to give up. He valiantly fights off the monster single-handedly, determined to protect those around him without a second thought for his own safety. His actions demonstrate a selfless courage that starkly contrasts with Ains's calculated protectiveness. Exhausted and overwhelmed by the toxins, Noor collapses, blood tainted by the poison filling his mouth. Lying on the ground, he is left wondering if this is where his story ends. Comment for part 2, and don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out if you enjoyed. Until next time, peace.